And joining me now are Dustin Stockton and Jennifer Lynn Lawrence, who both helped plan the January 6th rally on the ellipse, are cooperating with the committee investigating the insurrection. They are accompanied by Dustin's attorney, Josh Nass. It's great to have you both on. Let me just start with your experience of interfacing with the committee, and I understand there's probably ground rules over what you can and can't say in terms of what transpired, but if you could just take me through, Dustin, your experience yesterday. I believe you were sworn in and deposed, is that right?
Well, I just watched your introduction, Chris, and that is exactly the kind of misinformation that drove us to put the tour together in the first place.
What was misinformed?
The way you characterize. No, I want to bring some. I think it's important to set the record straight.
Sure.
You said the characterization that we were dangled a pardon by Paul Gosar in order to put these events together just simply doesn't match the facts. So, we've been willing to turn every single thing over. We started the tour before we ever heard from Gosar.
Right.
Congressman Gosar, who's been a dear friend of Jen and mine, would have done that for us anyway. Also, the two of us didn't need pardons. We haven't been charged with any crime.
But Gosar...
Not once.
Let me just say...
So the idea... No, and your characterization...
Okay.
That we were dangled, there was some kind of quid pro quo.
Sure.
In order for us, that we were going to get a pardon, and that's what kind of motivated us to do it. What motivated us to do it personally is that those charges, everything that I have, everything that we put together, the indictment from the SDNY, every piece of evidence I had as one of only two founders and an original board member, was exculpatory. The charges in the indictment were trumped up. They were used to disrupt the political network that included the CEO of the winning 2016 campaign.
Let me just
and
stop
then
you right there.
The media comes out and parrots it.
Okay, listen, let me just be clear with you. I have zero dog in the fight about the characterization of what happened with you and Paul Gosar. I have zero dog in the fight about, like, we built the wall. I don't know what the facts are about we built the wall. I know there were federal indictments, so let me just ask you this, just to clarify. You had a phone conversation with Paul Gosar's chief of staff, right?
Yeah, we did talk to Tom Van Fleen, yep.
Yeah, and he said that Paul Gosar had been talking to the president specifically about pardons.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so in a conversation with you in which he's praising your work organizing the rallies, he also tells you that the congressman had a conversation with the president of the United States about pardons, correct?
Yes, that did happen.
Okay. Whether that's a dangle or not, people could judge. I don't care whether it's how you characterize it. I just want to be clear on the facts here. You talked to the chief of staff, and he said that Gosar had a conversation with the president about pardons. And we should also note, the president did follow through and pardon an individual involved with We Built the Wall, named Steve Bannon, who was facing federal indictment.
Well, I think this is somewhere where we probably will be in a little more in agreement, Chris, which is... Of course, Trump pardons the one guy, like of the guys who were indicted, who has all the money and political connections to fight it. The triple amputee war hero, who wasn't a lawyer, wasn't a political operative, right? Brian Kolfash, who started it. We brought people like Steve Bannon and Chris Kobach, and we feel really bad about that at this point, but we brought them in to protect Brian as he did this project. And yet, the one person who still got the charge, it's not one, there's two other guys too, but Brian in particular got left out to dry. So Trump pardons the only guy that he thinks that he can get something back from. And that's kind of that's been the hardest thing for, I think, me and Jen to deal with at this point, which is there were several things, like we saw warning signs along the way with Trump, right? And frankly, we made some excuses for him and excuses for why, maybe Michael Cohen or Stephanie Winston Wilkoff or some of these other people that we knew and liked, right, had run into trouble with it. But for us, when he directed people to the Capitol at the 6th, what we revealed to the committee is that there was an internal conflict that was ongoing inside the organizer groups about what the program and what the day on January 6th should look like. And we kind of lost that battle. And we didn't realize we lost that battle until President Trump told people to walk down to the Capitol. And we had put several events in D.C. together before. We knew the kind of logistics it took to do that safely. The marshals, the security,
Sure.
the stage, the sound, all the things you have to do to be able to safely manage a crowd of that size. And we knew that wasn't in place. And we knew that the people that they had asked to lead that were not people who should ever be associated with something as solemn as the White House. And so for us, it was devastating. Like it was very deflating. And it's one of those like snap to reality moments where you look back over all of the previous warning signs that you've ignored, and you have to challenge yourself on it.
So I just want to get your thoughts on this, Jennifer, because I have not heard from you yet. I just want to note when you talk about sort of Trump pardoning the one guy that he sort of got something out of, that the idea of like a pardon in exchange for maybe positive work there seems to be like not an implausible thing that was operating, at least in the mind of Donald Trump. So like, we're not going to put that in the category of the ludicrous, right? Jennifer, I want you to speak to what Dustin just said, which I think is very interesting about like unwillingly joining a club of people who trusted Donald Trump and then felt betrayed by him, and then come out and say, yeah, there were some warning signs there. Like, do you feel like you're in that group now? Is that where you're at?
I mean, of course, hindsight is 20/20. Looking back on some things, you know, I have some questions that I would love to ask President Trump, someone who I have known almost a decade now, and has actually played a huge part in my life, you know, as I've grown up. And, you know, I was one of the earliest supporters of President Trump. You know, in 2011, I was at Trump Tower when the Republican committee chairs from all over the state got together to beg him to run for governor. And at that time, you know, he said that his path ran through DC and not Albany. And he knew right then and there, and he convinced me right then and there. So I've been a solid Trump supporter this whole time. But following We Build the Wall, you know, the day after we were raided, and we are completely innocent in this, President Trump came out on his Twitter and started throwing us under the bus, saying we were showboating and, you know, going after the project. And I mean, when we raised that money, we did it in a very Trumpian way, a way, you know, that we hope that President Trump, you know, would approve of building on private land with private donors. And to see him come out and throw us under the bus, you know, it was very hurtful. And then, you know, as things progressed, we thought, you know, maybe he was still mad at Steve. Maybe, you know, maybe there was something else. And then we saw, you know, what happened to us, you know, losing our bank accounts and stuff that happened to us after the raid. And then censorship on social media is playing a huge part. I mean, when we're talking about election interference or election fraud, I would say censorship plays a huge part in that.
So I want to ask you about, let me follow up. Let me follow up on something.
I just want to say, Donald Trump calling you a showboat is like Michael Jordan calling you the greatest ever at basketball. Like, I kind of took it as a compliment.
Okay, but you got that in. So let me just follow up. There's a key factual claim you're making here, which I just want to follow up on because I think it's key, and then I want to come back around to one more thing, and then I will let you guys go on with your evening. So the key factual claim here, which I think is fascinating, is essentially an internal debate that emerges among the organizers about what happens after the ellipse. And if you've ever organized something, you know that internal debates about things like this happen all the time. It's par for the course, right? A lot of cooks in the kitchen. What you're saying is there was a group that wanted to mobilize that huge crowd and basically kind of send them off towards the Capitol without a permit, we should note, without security, without any sort of checks for who would control the crowd, who would lead them, who would make sure things didn't get out of hand. And you were in the opposite faction that said we shouldn't do that. And the moment that you found out you lost that internal debate was the president of the United States saying literally to the riled up crowd, now you're going to come with me down to the Capitol so they can hear you how angry you are. That's what you're saying and what you're telling the committee. Jennifer.
Absolutely. Yes, that is. And I mean, I'm quoted in ProPublica. I don't know if I'm allowed to say on air what I actually said the moment that, you know, he said it from the stage, but you can go look up that quote. But I mean, at this point, we didn't know. Our plan for that day was we were supposed to stay at the Ellipse all day, and we were being told that we could stay there 12 and 14 hours until all the electors had been seated up at Capitol Hill. And, you know, it was portrayed to us that, you know, if the electors were seated for President Biden, that Trump would, you know, recognize those results. So he wanted the largest crowd ever. This is what was portrayed to us, you know, at the Ellipse, that if he had to give, you know, whatever his form of his, you know, sayonara speech was, you know, he wanted the biggest crowd there possible. And that was our plan. So the minute that we realized, like, oh my God, you're marching those people, we have nothing in place, like there's nothing, like, what are you doing? And it was so disheartening and so deflating, and it's really not okay.
Okay, last question to you, Dustin. I just want to sort of level set here, right? So you're going around the country, you're saying this election was stolen, it was a Stop the Steal movement. Like, you do get that it wasn't stolen, right? That, like, Smartmatic didn't manipulate votes, an Italian satellite didn't get in, the ghost of Hugo Chavez did not come back to inhabit Dominion votes, that there wasn't 50,000 ballots stuffed in a suitcase in Fulton County, that all of those claims were not true, right?
Well, again, for Jennifer and I, it goes back to we have some personal issues. Just like, although I would ask you, do you now admit that the Russia memes that you guys ran 24 hours a day, like in the early days of the Trump, right? They got maybe several million impressions, which our pages often
I mean, you gotta cite something specifically. No, Dustin. I'm saying there are specific facts about the election. No. We're not talking about you want to talk about characteristics.
The Dominion
I'm saying
stuff. There were tons of ridiculous claims.
The election, whatever you think about my coverage,
claims.
Which you have not watched.
Joe Biden's the president.
Listen to me. No, I want something more than that. The claim that the election was stolen, that there was widespread manipulation of ballots by either the software makers who ran machines, in some cases didn't even run the machines, by individuals who were systematically committing fraud on a scale of tens of thousands of votes to alter the outcome, that those are false claims. I'm just trying to establish a shared reality here.
Those specifically are false claims. I think
great.
Democrats and Republicans, wait, just real quick, because it's important.
We've made so much progress here, Dustin.
Democrats and Republicans, every 4 years, whoever loses, right, then goes on to say, oh, well, it was broken this way and it was broken this way. It's not that there aren't things that aren't broken and should be done better with mail-in balloting, with the way we verify people, the way we make sure everybody has access to voting. There is common ground here.
It wasn't
stolen. The problem is, partisanly, what we do is the left fights when they lose, the right fights when they lose.
Well,
we should really all be in favor of just broadly improving the system.
I think we should have a great system of open franchising, and I don't think that people should carry a lie about a false election or storm a Capitol or attempt to override the votes of the voters, which I think all of us agree on. Dustin and Jennifer, you guys gave me a lot of time tonight.
Or widespread Russian interference.
I wish you well.